You know, I feel like I don't properly share my admiration for games on this channel. Like, yeah, we all know I can be a wife guy when it comes to video game characters, and we also know that I have an appreciation for game mechanics in a way that leads me to create challenges to find new and interesting ways to mess with said mechanics. However, I feel like I've never properly encapsulated that I tend to casually play games in a way that one might consider similar to a games journalist. Nor do I believe that my roots as a speedrunner or guide writer have ever really come up in any of my runs. And I think it's all of these little things that have combined to make what is possibly one of my stupidest runs yet. For you see, this run all started with one simple question. What's the minimum number of quests necessary to beat Unicorn Overlord? However, I completed such a run and found it a bit too easy. It only took 14 hours, and I still had access to plenty of game-breaking things. But once I came in contact with the speedrunning community for this game, an evolved version of this idea began to brew. Now, I don't know about y'all, but one of my favorite lesser-run categories that exists for some games is low percent. For those of you not accustomed to speedruns, low percent is a category where you complete as little of a game as possible while still beating it. This can usually align with the any percent category of a game, but there are times where it's faster to beat a game by doing some extra content, like side quests or the like. The any percent category of Unicorn Overlord is a perfect example. See, while we go for the bad ending, we take a moment to save Scarlet, deal with Monica, help Yana, recruit Rosalinda, and assist Oclise in order to get the items we need to take on Galerius. However, it's theoretically possible to immediately head for Galerius once you land in Cornea. We simply don't do so because, well, that would be slower than doing all of our preparations. Not to mention, it would be difficult as hell to pull off. This is the idea of low percent. It's of higher importance to do as little as possible over completing the game quickly, and as a result, a lot of low percent runs can be heavily skill-based, or obscenely long and annoying. If you know something like Twilight Princess low percent, then you know what I mean. So, the idea of this run evolved from a minimum quest run to asking, what is the lowest percent of the game necessary for completion of the true ending? Of course, I should probably lay some ground rules as to what I count as low percent for this game. Since the game has no overall completion percentage to track, I chose to make an inverse to the 100% rules for Unicorn Overlord on SRC. This means that all things will count towards completion are quests, unique recruits, towns restored, and Colosseum battles. Now that we know what to avoid, it's time to fail at avoiding those things as we begin the game. Once we're done with the main tutorial, we're given the option to choose our difficulty level. Because this isn't a speedrun, I've chosen to swap out getting a low time with completing as much as I can on a high difficulty. As such, I've decided to make Expert the default difficulty and will only lower it if I feel things are too difficult for me to work around. As such, we begin our first map in Cornea on Expert. Since this is still tutorial land, there's nothing too difficult to deal with here. My first vital decision is made here though, as it will have effects later down the line. That being my team comp, as I want to minimize switching characters around too much. Most importantly is my primary team of Elaine and Clive. Clive, while a good fighter, exists to boost the movement of Elaine's unit. Not to mention that if I unlock promotions, his ability to buff cavalry will also affect Elaine. Next is a unit containing Hodrick and Chloe. They are a temporary unit whose sole purpose for now is defending the command post. Last is Joseph's unit. Joseph is Joseph. He also has Travis here. The main purpose of his unit is to help feed experience to Travis as quickly as possible. With my units chosen, I send off Elaine's unit to deal with the enemy head-on. This is because I want most of the experience on Elaine's unit, as well as to grind rapport levels. Rapport with Clive isn't vital, but it can still be helpful. Anyways, Elaine is meant to focus on absorbing experience, while Joseph takes control of the nearby ruins. The reason I do so is for the do. However, dues are useful to me for what some might consider the wrong reasons. For you see, while gaining some extra stats could be nice, I can also sell dues for a pretty penny in order to further more lucrative ventures, like decent equipment. Once I have everything I need, I move to kill Aubin, ending our first proper map. Afterwards, we're forced through some more tutorials that rack up our quest count before I quickly restore the nearby town. Now, hold on, you might be asking why I just restored the town despite doing so counting towards completion. And the reason is doing so will be the only way to reach Palavia Island, which, last time I checked, is required for completion of the true ending. And I do so early as it will allow me to station a guard to gain free money after battles. It's a pitiful amount of money, but gods will I want it. Anyways, once I'm done with that, I avoid making eye contact with everyone who wants my help in order to hoof it towards Yana, as she's needed to enter Elheim, and the completion of Elheim is necessary to get the Ring of the Maiden, which is, required for the true ending. Getting Yana here is pretty important. Not to mention she'll be an important character in the future for different, yet somewhat related reasons. Whatever the case, her chapter isn't too bad if you play smart. At this point, Travis is in my main party due to having unlocked 3-person units. As this left a free space in Joseph's unit, I handed him Aubin. Aubin isn't here to fight though. His purpose here is the use of his Valor skill, which will give a unit 2 free stamina. By having Joseph tail my units, I can make use of him to assist in weakening enemies, but more importantly, I can keep him close for free stamina recovery if need be. Having 0 stamina isn't necessarily a bad thing, by the way. This is just in case of really, really bad situations, and I had some on my first attempt before I resorted to this tactic. Once we finish this map, Yana joins our army, and she will become a permanent addition to Elaine's unit. She'll be helpful in rounding out his unit with a magic attacker, but she also has another role of vital import that will come up later, so keep that in the back of your mind. Once I've done a bit of shopping, it's time to move on to rescuing Scarlet, an activity that I'm usually good at avoiding. However, I can't make any progress without doing so. Anyway, this map sucks. I tried it on Expert, and Renault became a complete roadblock. I couldn't find a way to get past him on this difficulty, so I lowered the difficulty to Tactical. Doing so made the map easily doable, though I should also thank my luck in Elaine's unit getting stuck inside Galerius' hitbox. And now that I've rescued Scarlet, it's time for me to ignore her existence. For while she's normally supposed to be a great unit as the deuteragonist of this game, she pales in comparison to what I'm cooking. And trust me, I am cooking. With Scarlet's existence now safe to ignore, I immediately run into Elheim, which may sound stupid. I am way underleveled for Elheim after all, but I'm not entering Elheim to battle. Not yet, at least. I do so to immediately obtain Rosalinda. Rosalinda will be one of our major crutches in this run, as she'll be one of the few advanced classes we'll have access to for some time. And while hiring mercenaries is an option, honors are a precious commodity in this run. This makes her invaluable to me. Also, while I'm here, I dodge my way through Elheim to unlock the first story quest here, just to save myself time on backtracking in the future. Anyways, now that I've got Rosalinda, it's time to head to Drakkenhold. Sadly, while it's not marked as a story quest, the battle for Mir is required to enter Drakkenhold, and for completing the mission, we obtain Virginia and Leia. Up next, the General in Black. Now, on this map you usually recruit 3 characters. Emphasis on usually, for you see, only one of these characters is actually required. As soon as the battle begins, I send 2 of my units off towards the right side of the map. In this case, I'm using Elaine's unit along with a newly formed unit containing Virginia, Leia, and Fran. Virginia's unit has the main purpose of fighting off flyers and scouts, as Leia will always attack with true strikes, and to make up for her less than stellar strength, Fran will use inspiration to massively up Leia's attack power. Once my units have made enough progress to the east, Prim enters the field, and now that she's out here and recruitable, I ignore her to go clear out the southern strongholds. The reason for this is that Prim is coded to show up once you move far enough east, meaning it's impossible to prevent her from showing. However, she's also completely optional. As such, I need to avoid approaching her, otherwise she'll automatically recruit herself into my army, and there will be no way of undoing this. Thankfully, there's a hunter garrisoned in a nearby watchtower. This means that Prim will eventually get killed should she be ignored for long enough. Since I have to wait for her to die, I may as well take the time to claim the other strongholds. Once she's dead, I can then send a unit to take the eastern stronghold, where Aramis will appear, and while you're supposed to recruit him with Prim, there is technically a secondary way to do so. For, you see, the devs created a failsafe in case you're bad enough at the game to get Prim killed. Instead of Prim asking to speak with Aramis, Leia will request a duel with Aramis. Should you have her in the unit that fights him, she will then recruit Aramis after completing the map. I want to avoid this. As such, I need to be certain that whatever unit fights Aramis doesn't contain Leia. Without her, he will simply be killed in battle, preventing him from being recruited. As for Berengaria, she's a forced recruit as per the story, and I am thankful for that. Y'all will learn why very soon. More importantly, we need to figure out how to move forward in Drakkenhold. There are 2 paths available to reach the next story mission here. The usual path would be through the desert. However, the desert route forces us to take on not 1, but 2 side quests in order to get by. This is because Aubin forces us to help Magellan in order to enter the desert. And then we have to help Liza with the Gloucester problem in order to leave the desert. Having to complete 2 whole quests is not optimal. Though we can also take the northern route. This path is completely blocked by one walled city, Adoptee. And normally a player might avoid this route as it's a level 15 battle. However, beyond it is a straight shot to the next story quest, meaning it's a route that requires only 1 battle. This, obviously, is optimal. As such, I enter the battle for Adoptee, having now replaced Joseph with Berengaria. Despite joining us at a low level, she's extremely powerful and makes up for all of Joseph's deficiencies rather quickly. Once the battle is over, Jeremy asks to join our army, but I cannot allow that as he will increment my unique recruit count. Thankfully, unlike the recruits in the desert, he is optional, meaning I can kill him for a reward. And while the 20,000 gold I get here would normally seem meaningless, it is currently the greatest gift one could ask for. After all, since sigils are off limits and there are no mines available to me right now, I have no source of extra money, making my purse rather light. Anyways, I take a moment to hire a sellsword, for while my honors may be limited, sellswords are too great a boon to be ignored, and I'm not going to get any free sellswords with the route I'm taking. So, say hi to Gregor. We must cherish him. After all my shopping is done, I then head to the Colosseum to trigger the next story map. That doesn't mean I actually start it, though. For you see, doing Gilbert's quest right now is just signing up for trouble. Completing this quest will lose me Berengaria, and while this map would be good for level grinding, the final map in Drakkenhold would need to be completed in order to get Berengaria back. I'll let y'all know right now that doing that map at this point would be hellish. As such, I immediately teleport to Helheim to start the first story battle there, because my level 12 units are clearly ready for a level 19 battle. It's at this point that I lower the difficulty to normal in order to beat this map, and while I know I could probably stay on tactical had I chosen to finish Drakkenhold first, having a low percent completion is more important than the difficulty I play on, not to mention that this move is vital to making Drakkenhold easier. Anyways, as I ignore the warning about this map being too high a level for me, I begin my assault on the castle. But before I can reach the castle proper, I have to take hold of all the districts in order to lower the barrier. Being such a low level makes combat difficult for Elaine's team. Less so for Berengaria if I use her properly. But this is where Gregor comes into play. While Berengaria is busy taking on the map from right to left, Elaine is working on clearing a few of the enemies to the left for a bit of experience. Though I keep having to garrison him in our command post in order to refill his health, and it becomes basically impossible for him to win battles once he comes close to the enemy garrison. Gregor helps solve these issues though, and you'll never guess how. Ooh, you have no idea why Gregor's so cool. It's summon warriors. It's always summon warriors. I'd mostly use the warriors at the start to soften up units for Elaine to kill, as a way of drip-feeding his unit experience. However, I can also just send Gregor up to the garrisoned enemy and have him spawn warriors on top of them, winning the day without even lifting a finger. Doing so obtains me the final district, forcing El Talinda onto the battlefield. I had sent Berengaria up right by the bridge so as to be able to attack immediately, and I can use teleport to have Elaine join her. As Berengaria's unit has already caught up in levels, I have her weaken the enemy for Elaine to kill. Same applies to El Talinda, as Berengaria deletes the first row so Elaine might destroy the boss, and by making use of Valorous Order and Royal Order, I'm able to guarantee that Elaine not only gets a victory, but that he also gets double experience in order to catch up on those final few levels. Once we've claimed victory, El Talinda joins our army, and it's here where I can begin to tear the game apart. For with the Berengaria, El Talinda, Rosalinda Wombo combo, none will be able to stand before me. I will say that while I created this unit and understand what's happening, I still cannot understand why the hell it works. It just does. And we're able to see that in action as we move on to fight Baltro, even raising the difficulty back to tactical. Yeah, by the way, anyone who thought Erveldo was next is wrong. I sort of assumed it was a story chapter the first time I played, but the game just lets you ignore Gailey and his arson, which means he can have fun burning down the forest while I get on to more important matters. Anyways, back to Baltro. He would be an issue for my rather weak army considering we're still only 3 3-man units, not to mention our complete lack of class promotions. But Berengaria's team is simply too good, destroying all who stand in her way. Travis is also really good here as the new leader of the little Sellsword and Leia team. There's otherwise little to say here. I use this map as a moment to try and catch up on levels for my non-Berengaria teams. Travis is a thief, so he's broken enough to not need help, and Elaine's team can use the ballista to get a few kills in. More interesting is the last required Elheim chapter. Once Baltro is felled, we can fight Alcina. The gist of this map is to take the other Nasthirian gates before attacking Alcina. This is pretty difficult with only 3 units, but 3 is the bare minimum I need here, and yes, while I could make more units, such isn't ideal as my honors are limited as compared to normal and I have no way to grind experience, so adding more units would stretch both of those resources rather thin. Anyhow, I found that the best way to do this map was by having Travis defend the command post. His ability to dodge tank made this a rather easy task. Meanwhile, Berengaria and Elaine were to take the main part of the map to garrison in the Nasthirian gates. I also started moving Travis towards Alcina soon enough. Not because I felt the command post was safe, but rather due to too many magic assist reinforcements running past the command post. Their assists were doing too much damage to Travis, so I felt it important to nip them in the bud instead of huddling in my command post. This worked pretty well for me though, as it meant Rosalinda could use distant swap once the northernmost Nasthirian gate was taken. This allowed Travis to take charge of garrisoning in the gate, while immediately warping Berengaria to Alcina. With such a swift maneuver, defeating Alcina was a cakewalk. And as the gates were covered by my units, she had no way of prolonging the battle with her fun little gimmick. For completing Elheim, we obtained the Ring of the Maiden. This is an item vital to obtaining the normal and true endings. Makes me wonder what a low percent run of the normal ending would be like. You know what? Fuck it. If I get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, I'll try it. Low percent normal ending would almost definitely be hellish, considering I wouldn't even get Berengaria. Holding myself back from thinking about that anymore, I suppose it's time we get back to talking about the Ring of the Maiden. You see, I need to reach maximum rapport with a character in order to give them the Ring of the Maiden. And the problem here is that gaining maximum rapport also requires watching all of Elaine's rapport conversations with his chosen maiden. These conversations, however, can only be watched if the surrounding area is made safe. Luckily, there are exactly 4 characters who are available maiden options in the route I'm taking, those being Scarlet, Lex, Yana, and Unifi. If you only do minimum quests and not low percent like I am, though you could also get Fidokia as an option. I should probably emphasize once again that these are the options available to me on this specific route, by the way. Slight spoiler, but Scarlet's final rapport conversation is only available if you take the same route as I do to reach Albion. Should you take the other, Scarlet will be unable to have her final conversation. As for who I chose, that would be Yana. This is why she's so vital to my party in this run. Due to getting her so early and her rather useful class, getting her to maximum rapport is rather easy. Not to mention that her favored gifts are precious gems, which I got plenty of as rewards. So getting her to like me is cheap and easy. Anyways, once she has an Alcina moment and realizes she may be just like that freaky lady, I'm then able to hand her the Ring of the Maiden. I'm doing so early so as to not forget and be confused later on, but I'm also doing so as the rings will buff Elaine and Yana's stats. Getting a +5 to all stats, plus an additional AP or PP is huge when you're stuck to base classes. Also, we finally reached C rank, which means that I can now have units that contain 4 characters instead of 3. I rounded out Berengaria's unit with Chloe for her neat support skills while handing Elaine a generic hunter to help with his weakness against flyers. This also comes useful in the form of Arrow Rain being busted and a helpful technique to safely gather experience on Elaine's unit. Assuming I even have Valor, because I don't know if I've stated this yet, Valor is a limited commodity in this run, especially when I lack an easy source of hallowed Cornash. All I've got is whatever's in the overworld. How I feel about my Valor situation doesn't matter though, as it's Pistorius time. I head in through the main gate, as doing so costs us 1 quest, unlike the sea route, which would cost us 2. And as we come from the land, we have a far easier layout for Unifi's map. Because this is a surprisingly easy chapter, I chose to take it slowly. We have yet to run into super problematic bestial groups here, so this is the perfect time to grind some experience on my units. So I take the fort up north and the harbor down south before fighting Conrad. Once the map is cleared, I ignore progressing the story for a moment in order to find some stone in the overworld. This may seem weird, but it's vital I start picking up stone right now. Should I begin this task too late, I will essentially soft block this run. Or I guess I'd have to take on extra quests to be able to finish this run, thus preventing me from doing the true bare minimum. Yeah, there was a lot of planning that went into this run, if y'all couldn't tell at this point. It may not seem it, but everything I've done so far is extremely intentional. Once I've collected 3 sets of stone, I move on to the next main quest in Pistorius. Now, I love Fog of War maps under normal circumstances like the cretin I am. However, due to my lack of Farsight crystals, thanks to my tight purse strings, along with my utter lack of free valor for vision clearing skills, I have to play this map truly blind. I feel as though that's an experience most people would hate. Though I've quickly learned that I've sort of memorized this map. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure how to explain the way I do this map, for you see, The snow is so thick, it even obscures the environment, making it nearly impossible to see the make of the map. However, nearly does not mean completely, and while one may assume my eyesight is shit due to the fact that I'm a glasses wearer, I've always had an acute eye for detail. See, if you look closely, and I mean real close, it's possible to see the map through the fog. You can see the mountains, forests, and most importantly, the buildings. If you can spot those marker buildings through the fog, then you're set to beat this chapter without any aids to widen your vision radius. For you see, each of these marker buildings is the location of an enemy fort. Considering the goal of this map is to take all the forts, this is the only information you really need from the map. And the enemy units are thankfully rather weak to balance the gameplay of this chapter. Another fun little thing is that bestial units are actually possible to spot inside the fog. You may ask as to how that's possible when you know the fog is meant to obscure everything and make it impossible to see enemies. Well, the answer is due to the fact that the devs added a whole glowy effect on bestials to show they're powered up at night. And this effect can barely be seen in the snow, which means it's just barely possible to track enemy bestials on this map at night. This is an extremely difficult detail to pick up on, but if you can learn this skill, it can make you a pro of sorts at doing this map without having to memorize enemy placements. Okay, now that I'm done being sidetracked by how to outsmart the Fog of War here, I should probably explain why I'm here in the first place. After all, I could have finished Drakkenhold by now, or headed for Albion instead. Well, it's because the boss here drops the Ice Storm Staff. Handing this to Yana gives her the Blizzard skill, making her extremely powerful. I say extremely powerful because this is the only high-level active skill she has access to without being promoted. Well, unless I obtain a different staff, but this one is free, not to mention that Blizzard hits a full unit, making it a good full party wipe spell. The only issue is that it's a charged skill, which makes Yana vulnerable. But if she can get off an attack, it is over for the enemy. While I'm here, I decide that I may as well try the next Pistorius story quest. It's long and annoying, but I get it done. The number of near-death experiences was way too much for my taste, though. I don't know what it is, but there's just something about the second half of Pistorius that makes it the most difficult part of the game, whether or not you're properly leveled. It's probably all the bestials. Bestials are OP. Anyway, it's because of this difficulty spike that once I finish the penultimate map of Pistorius, I immediately run off to Elheim. You may be asking why Elheim. After all, I've said I was done here and completed Elheim's story. There's no further reason to being here, and I've yet to finish Drakkenhold. Why not head back there now? Well, you see, I actually want to head to Albion now. Now, taking that at face value sounds ridiculous. I'm struggling with Pistorius and want to skip the rest of it for the final area of the game? Surely I've lost my marbles. Well, no, I'm completely sane, at least in this moment, and I can luckily do this as the two routes to Albion are of equal cost in terms of completion. Anyways, the Elheim Harbor is easy to take, and the boat brings us to the one thing between us and the Albion story proper. There are actually only two story maps here in Albion, and both of them are locked behind Fedokia. He's easy enough to handle, though. Despite being underleveled, my team can take on his units. Not to mention Arrow Rain deletes angels from existence, and summoning warriors fixes the whole boss behind a gate issue. Fedokia is just practice, though. Now we have to deal with Dimitri Fire Emblem. As I have few units to work with, most of whom are made up of base classes, trying to rush the boss is a no-go. I need to make sure my command post is safe. As such, I chose to take all the garrisons on my side of the map before making my advance across the bridge. How I completed this map makes a great show of how much better promoted classes are over base classes. Their stat boosts, extra AP and PP, and additional skills make them so much better than the base classes. And such improvements make Berengaria's unit the only one really capable of doing anything. Travis's unit can sometimes pull through if RNG plays in his favor, and Elaine just has to hope he can face tank attacks for his unit, but Berengaria is my only guarantee of success. However, even Berengaria seemed no match for Nigel, so I had to change the leaders of my other units to assist leaders. Doing so managed to both mess with the RNG and improve damage numbers enough to help Berengaria slimly claim victory. Luckily, the final map of Albion is much easier. It's definitely slower, but easier, and probably one of, if not the easiest finale for any of the countries. Sadly, I don't have a werefox to simply jump past the gate on this map and warp all my units to skip the first half of the challenge here, so I end up having to escort the battering ram across the map. However, that's made relatively simple with the help of Nigel. Not to mention that I got that hunter for Elaine's team specifically in anticipation of this map, for air rain does massive damage that's further increased when a unit leader is a flyer, which is nice when the enemy units are full of angels. Honestly, this map is so easy that I don't really have anything to say. It's just the same as a casual playthrough, just a bit more of a slog. What's important is that completion of Albion now allows me to visit the sanctuaries of Fevrith. Due to my current progress, 4 of the 6 sanctuaries are already available to me. However, the other 2 are locked behind story progress, as I've yet to finish Drakkenhold and Bastorius. So, once I've collected the sacral weapons available to me, I head back to Bastorius to finally catch Elgor. The reason I left this for after Albion is so that I can handle the map with level 40-ish units. See, stats don't matter too much in this game, at least so long as you have good units and items available to you. So tackling this map when 10 levels above or below wouldn't normally matter too much. However, I exist in the most peculiar of circumstances. Due to my lack of battles, I have very little in terms of money, and what little money I do have is usually put towards provisions so that damage taken isn't disastrous, especially when I have an utter lack of healers. This means stats are really my only way of improving units. By gaining an additional 10 levels worth of stats, my units are far more survivable against Bestrels, to which you might point out that I finished most of the stories earlier, so why put off the finale? Enemy reinforcements. That's why. Elgor sucks to fight because he pulls out 12 reinforcements all at once to explode you with hammers. I hate this map. My improved stats are just enough to help me pull through safely, and let me tell you, if you think this is some exaggeration, this map on low percent is extremely difficult even on story mode. Elgor's tactics are just that awful to deal with. But once you pull through the massive wave of reinforcements, this map is a breeze to get through. And once Elgor is defeated, we obtain the Bastorius Blue. I collected the last of the Bastorius Stone I need and repair the bridge in order to access the sanctuary. With the blue in hand, I can enter, leaving me with one last sanctuary towards the true ending. So, after ignoring Drakkenhold for about 5 or 6 hours, it's time to return to assist Gilbert with retaking the crown. Up first is the Colosseum map, and oh, look, it's already over. Though, I will share a fun fact about this map. If you don't deal with the desert or Hilda before showing up to help Gilbert, Hilda and Gloucester will show up as enemies. Anyways, for completing this map, Berengaria is abducted, hence why I put off this map for so long. And thankfully, I can get her back immediately with how overpowered I am for Drakkenhold. I mean, just look at this. The enemy stands no chance. Once the map is over, Gilbert takes his crown and talks about his brother Ludwig. Let's just never talk about how I might have killed the guy. What really matters is I get access to the final sanctuary, which means I can get the true ending and... Wait, what? You're telling me that Elaine has to be his promoted class in order to get the true ending? Well, I guess it makes sense from a development perspective, prevents a need for making an extra animation for his base class, it's just kind of funny, is all. Luckily, visiting the sanctuaries gave me just enough renown to reach B rank, allowing me to finally upgrade all my characters. Finally, I've gained power just in time for the last map. From here, I did the liberation mission for Sourier Calm, as completion of either a liberation or overworld quest is required to gain access to the final battle. With the way cleared, we can finally bring the fight to Galerius. As we're at the usual level for this point in the game, there's not really anything too difficult about this map. Well, other than the fact that we have 3 units, all of which consist of only 4 characters each. But if you've seen my bad ending video for this game, y'all should be well aware that's just enough to complete this map. Though it's easier here as I have better balanced units with better equipment. As for how I deal with this map, I just entered a bit of speedrunner brain, as I've run any percent for this game. I may not be as good as other runners, but it gave me enough knowledge to easily deal with this map using so few units. In essence, I sent Elaine to first take on Theodora. Clive's wild rush allowed them to break past her traps before taking her down. I then sent Elaine north to take down Narcisse. She's honestly a joke compared to the other Dark Marquis. Like, yes queen, summon some assist units, that'll save you. Not like I care when her low HP animation is so funny. Lady threw out her back getting her freak on at the club. Immediate redemption arc for her, in my opinion. Anyways, Helonius is also super easy. Dude just eats his own units, and the fire is automatically avoided when coming from the west. Which leaves Belisarius for last. Usually I let the green units kill him off, but for once they actually all managed to die with him. That's fine though, as Gilbert and Herman had shown up with those units. This gave me a character I could teleport all my other units to, as Gilbert's unit otherwise sucks ass. Without any of my own flying units, getting to Belisarius is actually dangerous for once, but I don't really care. The dude still falls no problem. Once Galerius joins the battle is when things start to become problematic. None of my units really have the ability to fight Galerius well. Well, at least it seemed that way until I remember the Rosalinda strats used in any percent. So I sent Berengaria to take him down, messing with Eltalinda and Rosalinda's stack tactics to essentially stunlock Galerius and get tons of damage in. It only takes a few rounds to down him before we're finally given our choice of ending, and obviously I chose the true ending as that was the goal of this low percent run. I did have a bit of a brain dead moment in the fight against Baltro here though, as I couldn't figure out why my units took so much damage, wasting time trying to think. But to be fair, it was like 1 AM when I got to this point. However, once I realized Yana wasn't using Celestial Light, I fixed her tactics and entered the battle with Baltro. With the challenge over, I guess it's time to go over our stats and answer what the bare minimum requirements are to gain the true ending. Well, in terms of quests, I had to complete 31 out of 181, landing us at a solid 17% quest completion. 22 of those are actual battles I had to do, while the rest are overworld and tutorial quests necessary to advance the story. As for unique recruits, I obtained 25 out of 70, just around 36% of the named characters you can obtain, which isn't that bad, though it sucks that a lot of the forced recruits are ass. Like, yes, I got all the recruits with unique classes, but 2 of those joined in the final battle, not to mention while their classes are good, they need good group synergy. which was difficult to obtain with my lack of resources. And as for towns restored, I only completed 2 out of around 103, landing us just below 2% completion, which is pretty good considering I only had to restore those towns in order to access Palavia and Albion. Factor in that I did 0 of the 58 Colosseum battles, and we can calculate a total percent completion of around 14%. Honestly, kinda surprisingly low. Of course, this isn't a weighted percentage, but it's a good visual for just how much stuff I ignored. The real question is if this is the true bare minimum necessary to gain the true ending. And if I'm gonna be honest, the answer is sort of. Alright, let me explain myself. You see, I've done the bare minimum assuming you don't use glitches. However, there exists a glitch in previous versions of the game that allows you to clip out of bounds in the overworld. Using such a glitch could possibly allow you to reach sanctuaries without having to complete story missions for their corresponding countries. There are a few issues with this, though. Firstly, this glitch requires completing Bastorius. Secondly, it seems to have been patched out with the current patch, and I sadly own the game digitally, so I have no way to downpatch and test this. But even if this glitch were to allow for the skipping of story to reach sanctuaries, Elheim and Albion must be completed in order to actually interact with the sanctuaries. Elheim for the Ring of the Maiden, and Albion for the actual sanctuary quest. This means, with current knowledge, only Drakkenhold could be skipped, which is still a decent number of characters and quests, assuming this skip would actually work. And even if, theoretically, we found a glitch that would let us skip both Drakkenhold and Bastorius while getting the true ending, we still have the renown issue. As I've learned while doing this challenge, a lane must promote in order to gain the true ending. Considering I just barely got to B rank in time for the ending, that means we'd have to make up for any missing renown with different quests that provide more renown. So, in short, this is the absolute bare minimum necessary to beat the true ending on current patch without glitches. And as for whether I recommend trying this challenge out, I wholeheartedly say go for it. It's definitely challenging, but it's also a ton of fun. If you need some convincing, just know that doing this run will provide you with a file where you can have Gaily fight himself. Whatever the case, I'll see you guys next time, where you'll see my shit taste in video games is not limited to Fire Emblem.